Hi, Derek. What do you want to see now here with exhibition games getting underway?
Structure, keep building on our process with implementing new neutral zone, new D zone coverage. Obviously, take a step every day, hopefully, with our structure. Some of it's new for the guys, but certainly establishing some compete, some attitude, can work on all those things. And again, feel fortunate that we have 8 games this year to start fine tuning some things before our home opener.
And you've, I think, mentioned, you want to see more or less everybody with everybody, but just as far as finding pairings and chemistry, the importance of doing that over these games as well.
Yeah. You'll see as we get going there, some of our games, we kind of work back maybe from our special team standpoint. So probably within one of these games, we'll have a special teams unit trying to get that organized and designed, and then we kind of work back the roster from there with the idea of getting certain guys a certain amount of games, certain amount of looks, and it'll certainly change throughout as the camp keeps going.
And just lastly, Tyler, any news there? Any update?
No, still day to day, probably being a little more cautious. Don't know when we'll see him next, but it will be, my guess is sooner than later, with when he'll be available to us.
Lastly, just so that gives an opportunity, because you talk about that's one line that makes sense to carry over Raymond, Dylan, and Tyler. That an opportunity for somebody else to get some looks there in that spot.
100%, and I think we'll see different guys there. I think even on day 2 there, we had Dylan with Zadina, and we've had some different looks. Obviously a little frustrating to have 3 or 4 or 5 of our top 9 out for camp to start, but it's given an opportunity for some other guys to get some different looks. So kind of been a positive with that in some ways.
Thank you.
Max Bowman.
Hey, Derek, I'm curious with Veleno, is he a guy that you're looking at for the roster in terms of only a center? Could he play wing for you? Like, how are you kind of viewing him?
I think we see him as a center. I think he is versatile enough to play both. But right now, our vision on him is helping us as a center and him growing as a center going forward.
And is he one of the guys? I know it's fresh slate and probably nothing's in ink yet, but like he was a guy who played 66 NHL games last year. Like, but he is waiver exempt. Like, how do you kind of view that situation and where he kind of stands?
Yeah, good question, Max. Because that's going to be a reality. You get to that point where guys are waiver exempt or they're not, and what we do with them. So, Joe will be back with us soon here. We want to get him a lot of time and looks in the preseason. Obviously, kind of going back to my comment earlier, not ideal having Cobb out for the preseason. But with that said, it gave Joe more reps with some different players, gives Ras some reps with some different players at center. So it afforded us a little bit of a luxury there, giving those guys those looks. So he'll be back soon here, and we'll get him back to center with some different guys and see how he looks.
Thank you.
Ted Colfin.
Hey, Derek, in your mind, do you have a roster kind of penciled in, or does it change day to day? And a follow up to that, how many spots do you think are open right about now?
Yeah, no, we have no mind at all. Steve and I have talked a few times. We've talked directly about being patient with this. Haven't really stressed about it or gone too deep into it. So yeah, no, I can't give you any looks at all or any numbers going forward. We're going to take the full 8 games. We'll let it play out and go from there.
When you found out you had 8 games, did you get like, oh man, that's a lot? But then I guess like this particular season, it kind of comes in handy for you.
It really does. It's first time, actually talking with Steve yesterday, this is the first time and maybe the only time in my NHL career I'll be happy to have 8 games. I know when
how many did you have in Tampa?
We would probably be around 6, the odd 7 now and then. And to me, 6 is good. 7's maybe a little too much. 8, seems very excessive, but I understand, there's a business aspect to it, but for us this year, it's going to be beneficial.
Okay, last one with Cobb. I mean, he is skating. So are you concerned he's going to be set back here with no games or no real practices or whatnot? Or what do you
Either
think?
or, I just, Pete's kind of cautioned us, that core surgery, it's just, there's good days and bad days to it. So there's going to be times, this media, you're out there watching him and he zips around, he may look 100%. It's just how he reacts after that. So we're no rush with him. Our ultimate goal is game 1. If he's available to us earlier for some reps within that last week, some hard reps, great. If not, we'll certainly get him shortly after. But we're no rush. We're with Copper.
Sounds good. Thanks for this, Derek.
Yep.
Bob Duff.
Derek, we've talked a lot about Soderblom and Edmondson so far. We haven't really talked much about Johansson. What have you seen from him? And he's a guy that's basically had 3 years of pro hockey in Europe. How much does that help him when he's making this transition?
Hockey sense guy, smart. Every day as the camp has grown and went on, I appreciate him more and more. And that's usually what happens when a guy just thinks the game. May not have the pop or flash or the size of other guys, but those guys with hockey sense, they continue to make plays. They keep showing up positively on video, being in the right spot, and he's been that guy. So it's been a good camp for him.
And was there any update on Robert Hogg from taking the puck yesterday?
No update. He said we reevaluate again today. The last report I saw last night, he was a possibility for today, but obviously that wasn't the case. So I don't know the extent of it, but that seemed fairly positive when Pete reached out with the last report last night that he might be available today. So hopefully it's a short term. And he's had a good camp too. We want to get him reps in game situations. He was slated to play game 1, so we'll evaluate that over the next couple of days.
And you look at it on paper and you think, wow, they've got a lot of NHL caliber defensemen, but we saw the same thing last year with this team where I don't think there was 8 guys that were NHL legitimate defensemen, but I don't think there was a time during the whole season where all 8 were healthy. It just seems like that's a position where you can't have enough depth.
No, you can't. And I think they did a good job. Steve did a good job of addressing it. And Bobby, you even talk about that. I mean, literally day 1 after free agency, we lost the right shut D. So yes, you can never have enough depth on D.
Thank you.
George Malik.
Hi, Coach. I was wondering if you could talk about the teaching process that continues as the exhibition season begins. Obviously, you've got to get a morning skate group prepared, and at the same time, the systems are still somewhat new, and you want to get the players acclimated or continuing to acclimate to the systems. How do you sort of split that up?
Yeah, we added a couple more things today, some entries. And as simple as it sounds, line changes, changing properly, how important it is within your structure. So obviously we worked on that today. The good thing is we talk about some of that structure. Now we have something to work off, which was a red-white game last night. So now guys will be getting some individual feedback. We're getting some team feedback. Our meeting tomorrow morning will be a lot of teaching from our structure in the red-white game, and that same type of teaching will go into probably the pre-scout or the team meeting right before the Pittsburgh game tomorrow night.
We've talked a lot about the sort of the battle for the last pair on defense. I'm kind of curious about what we might call a checking line as opposed to a fourth line. There are players, Michael Rasmussen, Adam Ernie, Giovanni Smith, they're all in a battle for their jobs as well. And obviously Joe Valeno. And as you said, waivers play a part in that, but is it more going to be performance driven than anything else?
We certainly hope so. We kind of have not had that luxury of looking at guys in certain roles, and like the way you quoted the checking line role, simply because all these players you mentioned are playing up in the lineup right now at camp with the 4 or 5 guys out already. So right now it's about getting everyone a ton of reps. Again, the injuries aren't ideal, but it's afforded us to get different looks. Even those type of players you're talking about, you've seen them, they've been with different players throughout and kind of moved up in our lineup, if you will.
Thank you.
Jacob Van Houten.
Yeah, thanks, Coach, for this. Just a real quick, should be an easy one. I noticed there were a lot of the Czech players we had on Team Del Vecchio and Team Red. And I noticed after practice also those guys would tend to stay on the ice and do a shoot around and kind of hung together. If you had any thoughts of keeping them together, you know, a little mini Russian 5 type thing or anything like that?
No. Probably, I wouldn't say by accident, but a lot of those guys are similar like players, skill, skate, shooters. So I think it was probably more of just getting them some time together and putting a line together yesterday. So obviously, you know, post practice, those guys, there's a comfort level. I'm sure they're going to gravitate towards each other. Which they do.
All right. Thanks, Derek.
Yep.
Last question, Art Regner.
Hi, Derek. I'm kind of curious, a player like Jeremy Biakabatuka, who a couple of weeks ago had no idea that he would even be here. How has his game or the way he's handled himself elevated himself in your mind, considering he appears at this point to make the most of an opportunity?
Elevated is a good word. He keeps earning looks. And every time we have a practice, a game, or a skate, we reevaluate a roster for the next day. And a lot of it will come from the staff, but some of it will come from Steve and his management group. And they continually want to see him in situations. So it's a credit to him and something he's earned throughout camp.
What have you seen and what do you like about his game thus far?
High compete. He can skate north-south, driven kid. He wants to be coached. Looks you in the eyes, just, you know, little habits like that as a coach you appreciate. So he's made a good impression. Really good kid. We've liked having him around.
And finally, you might have alluded to this already, but with 8 preseason games in your own mind, do you have a preconceived number for almost each individual player, how many games you would like to see them play out of these 8? Yeah,
good question, because we do put a lot of time into a ballpark matrix. We basically, you know, we'll give a guy a kind of number that we want to see and then work back from there. It never works that way. It changes daily. It's already changed many times. It'll change from yesterday to today. But yes, we kind of ballpark what we want to see out of each guy. Obviously the vets, they don't need to play 6 games. You know, Sundquist, these guys will be joining us. Bert coming off injury again, that number's probably changed, but again, some of those young guys, Simon, Elmer, guys like that, target a lot of games from. So yes, we have a target number, and then we kind of work back from that. But it always changes.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, that's all for us today. Thanks everyone for joining us.